Freedom, liberty, democracy, the core values of America. When the Nazis took over Europe, who was there to save them? America. The country that put a man on the moon. This is the America that your granddaddy was goddamn proud to be a part of.
So, you're American. You're seeing America sending billions of dollars to a random country on the other side of the planet. A country you've never heard of until now. Money being spent by America that could be spent within America. On America. And you don't like this. You don't care about those people because they're not American. They don't matter unless they live within your borders. So, to be convinced to send that money, it has to be within America's interests. As an American, with America first, you only want America to do things that benefits America. Well, good news. In this video, we're going to do just that. We're not going to make an ethical argument. We're not going to make the moral argument for helping Ukraine in this video. We're going to just bring the pure strategic interests that benefit America. Why America benefits from arming Ukraine, why they should arm Ukraine purely on their own interests. How it aids America. How it makes America in a better position, makes them economically stronger, improves security. All these reasons. America only. Because it doesn't matter that people are dying. We're not making that argument. Because you don't care about that. You just want to know, is it good for us? Is it going to make America stronger? Is it going to help us? And maybe you think, this is making us weaker. We're sending our money away. That money could be spent in America. Maybe you would have a point. But when we get into the video and get into the numbers, it starts to fall apart and no longer makes sense. And the more you look into it, the more helping Ukraine is actually in America's best interests. So to start off, I'm not saying helping Ukraine isn't the right thing to do. I'm not saying we shouldn't help Ukraine because it's the right thing to do. I'm simply making this video directed at the people out there that don't care whether or not it is the right thing to do, but only care whether or not it is in their country's best interests to help Ukraine. They don't care about the moral argument. To them, their countrymen are more important than any other human out there. So to address those people, we can't argue in sake of humanity, but in sake of their state, the American country. Why arming Ukraine is in America, the country's best interest. Because if you only care about someone because they're American, you don't care about people, you care about your country. So this argument has to appeal to that country. Now it should already be a little bit obvious. The American government is aiding Ukraine because it's in their strategic interests. The American government doesn't just do things out of its own will and for moral ethics. This isn't the only thing they act upon. They're not going to spend billions upon billions just because they think it's a nice thing to do. It is likely mostly due to their strategic interests. This doesn't mean that what they are doing is the right thing to do or the good thing to do. It simply means they may be doing it mainly for strategic reasons. So we have to actually cover the strategic reasons America is arming Ukraine. How arming Ukraine actually benefits America strategically, and why it is genuinely a good thing for America and its allies. So first off, America is a world power. I mean, I know on the internet you see so much criticism of America, and America does indeed have its problems. But America is still, by many metrics, the strongest country in the world. And the most successful country in the world, in many metrics. America ranks as the first largest economy in GDP. It's the first largest world reserve currency, with 60% of foreign banks using the dollar reserves, and 40% of global debt in dollars. It's the first in military strength and spending. I mean, that's pretty obvious. The American military is quite fucking big. They're first in spending on medical research. $612 billion. That is huge. Being the largest spender on medical research is something to be proud of. And that goes for many of these things. America isn't just rubbish. It's a huge country that is so successful that it is held to such high standards. But the truth is, it's still very successful. It's the first in AI innovation. It's the first in robotics. It's the first in entertainment and, Hollywood. I mean, how many American cultural icons are spread around the world? America's success in the culture of the world is huge. How American movies and music are spread around the world is colossal and very successful. America's also got the largest valued stock exchange. They're the first in aerospace and innovation. They're the first in Olympic performance. The literal measure of how great the human can be. They win in that when it comes to the Olympics, time and time again. They're the first in higher education. They're the first in charitable giving. They're the first in natural gas production. It's not Russia, it's America. In fact, America produces 50% more natural gas than Russia. They're the first in oil production. When Russia shows they can still sell oil and things, that's not as important as you think when you realise America is a giant at producing these things. It can easily do it. America doesn't need Russian resources. Europe become reliant on Russian resources because it was convenient due to how close they are. They are now moving to America's resources, which is something I'll touch on later and why it benefits America again. America's also first in nuclear power. 30% of world nuclear demand. 809 billion kilowatts. So not only is it oil and gas, while many may want those things to stop happening, America's also leading the way in nuclear power. And they're the second most technologically advanced nation in the world, behind Japan. I mean, America doesn't even rank that bad when it comes to living standards either. America is also in the top 10% of world living standards, at 17th. Now, this may get some criticism, and I understand there's some smaller countries in Europe that do very well. I'm from Europe as well. Russia is 66th on this list. China is only one above at 65th. Large countries don't tend to rank that highly in these regards. America is highly ranked compared to all of its competitors, and it's 19th in prosperity. So with all this taken into account, America is a success story. It has done very well. Yes, it has its problems. Whatever political alignment you have as an American, you will have problems that you view America as having. While you might disagree with the other side's problems they perceive, there's problems in America. That's every country. There is no utopia. Every country has problems. But the truth is, America has a lot going for it. And many of the problems it does face are vastly more down to politics than budget. The US could afford to have free healthcare. It could afford to, free healthcare depends how you want to word it. It could afford to deal with its prison population. These aren't issues due to a shortage of money. It's an issue due to the politics of that country, the way they want to run the country. America is the richest country in the world. Sending money to Ukraine is a drop in an ocean. But much of America's success comes from its near empire-like status as the sole true superpower of the world. America needs to keep its trade routes secure. It benefits greatly from large trade with its allies, many which look to them for security from other countries, and that's why they have great trade relations. South Korea and America, I mean, how many new Hyundais and Kias you see everywhere, whatever your opinion is on those cars, the trade is Goliath and huge and successful because that country views America as a guarantor of its security, as a worthy ally. The same with Japan. This is a common recurrence of countries that view America as an ally. They trade with America and America trades with them, and they make a lot of money, and it goes both ways and plays into the American success story. America's success story is because it's a superpower. It's a no-brainer why the American government wants to protect this. It's not simply about pride or some great idea of America controlling the world. America genuinely does gain from its status in the world. So it's important for America to defend that and to maintain it. But to someone who believes that helping other countries is irrelevant unless they're not Americans, they're not worth helping, they should already want to, America is a great country, we must preserve that. But it's just important to know why America is successful. Well, it is largely due to the way it is in the world. And a lot of that stems down to helping other countries, like Britain in the Second World War, and the support it gave to the Soviet Union. America's success sprouted from when it started getting involved in foreign wars and helping other countries face an invasion. There's so many parallels between now and when America was helping Great Britain in the Second World War. Helping another country, like Britain in the Second World War, yes, it was the right thing to do, but it was also greatly beneficial to America. Lend-Lease was great for America. America benefited hugely from Lend-Lease. The industrial capabilities of America exploded. American jobs... America came out of a terrible economic disaster and boomed. Sure, the factories were making tanks, but they were fighting in a righteous war. And again, if you don't care about whether or not it's the right thing to do, that's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, America gains from these scenarios, and it is doing that right now in Ukraine. I mean, the truth is, ignoring Russia means competing for trade, allies, security, influence, and leaving the back door open. America will grow economically weaker if it ignores its rivals and lets them do what they want. The American government knows this, but does America's patriots, those who claim they really love and care America, do they actually know what's best for that America that they came to know and love and be so proud of? Do they really know what's best for that country to stay as that global superpower? You want to be the best, strongest country in the world with the biggest economy and the biggest military that makes you feel so proud? Well, you've got to do big country shit. You want to be a superpower, you have to act like a superpower. Now, I don't agree with everything America does. I'm not American. I have no emotional attachment to that country. It's a foreign land to me. I've never even been there. It is irrelevant to me. But why it's important to put myself in the shoes of one of these American patriots, you know, the people that they say they're such huge patriots, yet they seem to want what is against America's interest, to let Russia do what it wants, which is ridiculous. So it's clear that the US hegemony, or however you want to word it, benefits the US greatly, which is obvious. But this is important to explain why US strategic interests exist, to avoid the oversimplified view that America could just turn its back on the world and would be completely fine in such a case. That America could save money that it sends abroad and spend it on its own people. That money is there because of that American Pax Americana. That's what makes that American money be there. America is better off now than if it completely isolated itself because of the amount of money it could lose in that scenario. And not just money, security risks as well. It may be fine for America to sit there and ignore the world, but if other countries take over all of the world, then that means nothing to you. But the reality is, America has a very strong global alliance. Europe, a region with a larger GDP than China, is one of America's closest allies. And that is huge. America benefits hugely from that. And it's not just Europe. There's Asia, with Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines, many countries which look to America because they view China as a threat. Many of those trade largely with the United States. Many countries in Africa, South America. You've also got places like Canada and Australia. America's global positioning makes it rich, very rich. Not just its domestic market, but its international trade. So if you're American, whether you're a patriot or not, you benefit from US power. You benefit from your country being strong, which is due to its international relationships and foreign policy. An isolated America is a weak America, and a vulnerable America. I mean, if you're an American patriot and you're scared of China rising as this global power and, well, their economy isn't as strong as America, what about the amount of people they have? Well, that's the great thing about America's international alliance. Europe is home to 500 million people, with millions also living in Australia and Canada and Japan and the Philippines, all these countries all over the world. But America's core alliance, NATO, nearly numbers 1 billion people. This is a strong alliance and gives America a real sharpness to its sword. I mean, Europe's GDP is 20 trillion. That's more than China. China's reported GDP, which is, by the way, largely believed to be overestimated. So just looking at Europe, it's clearly quite important to have a good alliance. China can be as strong as it wants and say they're nearly about to overtake America, but they're not nearly about to overtake NATO. America's alliance makes it so much stronger than it appears on paper. So it is Europe is a worthwhile ally for America to have. They are worth the time and effort. America's actions in the Second World War secured its success for the next nearly 100 years. China will be watching how serious is the United States with Ukraine. How is it going to be with Taiwan? The world is watching to see how strong is America now. Do the Americans really care? Are they burying their heads again, just trying to hide from the world and, just preserve themselves, be the country version of what is basically a pussy? Are they just trying to contain everything that they have got and hold it to themselves? Or they can actually do what they need to do to preserve it and continue being what they are for the perceived future? If you want China to overtake America and America to be a weaker country again, then all you need to do is to have an isolationist America. An America which wants to turn its back on its allies and only care about itself. That's exactly what Russia and China want. There's been great effort put to turn your patriotic Americans into self-wounding fools. People who want things that actively weaken the country that they are proud to be a part of because of its strength. That is so impressive, and that's one thing I would take my hat off to America's enemies, is they have managed to turn the American patriot into such a mugged off fool that they will support the very things that America's enemies want them to. If this was the same case in the 1940s, we would be seeing America's greatest patriots supporting letting Hitler take over Europe, that we should be spending money within America, or the First World War veterans, they need more money and support, and whatever reason to abandon America's allies. For America to turn its back and hide and be an isolationist and only care about America. If Germany managed to pull that off, even if it wasn't enough to sway elections, but nearly as much now, where we've got certain politicians spouting the exact sort of shit that Putin would almost pay them to, it would be insane. And thank God it didn't happen back then. But we're in a different world now. We're in a world where information is spread hugely, where money changes hands so much more, where there's an information war on the internet, where swiping up on some social media app can influence your worldview, make you think something which might not actually be the case, an oversimplified perspective. So I'm going on too much. If you at this point you don't think that it's in America's interests to combat Russia and China as global rivals, then you're a lost cause. There's nothing I can do about that, and I'm not going to rehash that point anymore. There's only so much I can do on that. But if you're starting to realise that, hey, maybe it's true, America has to deal with this, well, you're in fucking luck. Because there's a massive thing going on in the world right now where America can handle it. And that's the Ukraine war, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. China's looking what's going to happen if it invades Taiwan. And I'll tell you what, I bet he's smacking the back of Putin's head when he's seeing America fueling the Ukrainian military to push back the Russian military 10,000 square kilometres. Kherson and Kharkiv offensives. Holy fuck! If that doesn't send a message to America's enemies in the world, then honestly what does? And not only that, but it's a great deal too. I mean, we've got Europe turning to America now for their resources instead of Russia. Europe, which again, I think I've emphasised on why they're such an important ally, how they're now no longer reliant on Russia for their energy, and they're moving not just to any supplier, but to America. So America is also making money by selling Europe this stuff. That's a fucking hole in one. That's brilliant for America. Building a future alliance like that, where there's such an increase in trade, and I mean, Europe is becoming more independent from Russia than ever now. NATO is becoming more stronger. Countries are now moving on to actually go for that 2% GDP spending on military, which America has been trying to push for decades now. And they're finally actually realising, holy shit, we have a problem. But that's working in America's favour. America's not going to have to send troops to Europe if Europe is actually taking its defence seriously, and it now is. There's also the military question. With Russia's military, again, largely Russian old Soviet equipment left over from the Cold War, thousands of tanks when the Russian industry can barely pump out 20 in a decade now. Destroying Russian tanks is now worth it. It's worth the effort to do that. Russia's military is being declawed. The bear is not going to exist anymore. I mean, what's it cost Russia? Oryx, which visually reports on destroyed tanks using pictures, 1,901 MBT tanks, 2,254 infantry fighting vehicles, 311 APCs, 45 MRAPs, 188 mobility vehicles, 235 command posts, 298 engineering vehicles, 38 self-propelled anti-tank systems, 96 artillery support vehicles, 191 pieces of towed artillery, 369 pieces of towed artillery, 189 pieces of rocket artillery, 104... It fucking goes on. Russia's military is hurting. It's taking a fucking beating in Ukraine. Sure, Ukraine is struggling, but it's not the American military. America's stuff it's sending in Ukraine is older equipment. America can actually afford to replace stuff, unlike Russia. America is not only giving it to Ukraine, but through Lend-Lease, Ukraine has to pay back some of that. So it's not just being given to Ukraine for free. It's an excuse for America to spend money on its own arms factories, producing ammunition, which is good for American jobs. But how much is America actually spending in Ukraine? The total pledge is 80 billion, which is not just for this year or the last year. It's for the next number of years. What America's government is planning to spend on Ukraine. And so that means it can't be just used for 1 year. It's probably a number of years. So going 3 to 4 years, that's 0.4% of America's budget. 0.4% to annihilate your rival. Russia, without its large stock of tanks and artillery and weaponry, is so much weaker. Sure, it can threaten to use its nukes, which I know some people, that works. The whole Russian, we're going to nuke everyone. That is designed to make you shit scared and go, well, let's just let them do whatever they want. If you think that, well done, you've fallen for Russian psyops, because that's exactly why they make nuclear threats. And it works. But without their military equipment, they are far weaker, and that is the only thing they're left to be able to actually do. And that's very important, because you can't invade your allies with nuclear weapons. Now, if you see this 80 billion number and you're like, oh, fuck, I'm shitting myself, America's going to go bankrupt, how can we afford to... America spent $2.3 trillion in Afghanistan over the course of the war. $2.3 trillion. That is so much more. The amount of money America is sending to Ukraine compared to Afghanistan, with the added difference of how much America is gaining from helping Ukraine compared to Afghanistan, which ended as an American embarrassment almost, and could be seen to... I don't know, it depends on how you view it, but it could be seen as why Russia thought now's a good time to invade Ukraine. Maybe America, they're not going to want to be involved with this shit and go, we've had enough, we don't want to deal with that. But compared to the Ukraine war, which is costing so much less, yet being so much more of a good deal and gainful for America. And it's not just America either, it's not just America footing the bill for this. Europe has sent 40 billion in just economic aid. And in fact, the US ranks 5th as percentage of GDP support. That means there are 4 other countries that support America, that support Ukraine more, with the amount of percentage of their economy than America does. This is Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. Many of Ukraine's neighbouring countries. It's not just America footing the bill, and many other countries in the world do as well. So it's not too expensive for America. America spending 80 billion on this war compared to, like Afghanistan, 2.3 trillion, spending more per year by 3 times than they are in Ukraine. Ukraine is a good fucking deal. Now, this is just some numbers. So it works out about 0.36% of America's GDP. The US budget in 2022 was 6.27 trillion. The difference between 2022 and 2021 was half a trillion. So it was 5.3 trillion up to 6.27 trillion. That's 6 times the money they pledged to Ukraine in difference, in just variation for the budget. That's how much the budget varies. America, the aid they send to Ukraine is almost a shadow of just the variation of their yearly budget. So how much as an American are you actually sending you? How much is it costing you? That's what really matters. So 59.9% of the 331.9 million Americans pay tax. That's 199 million people that pay tax in America. If every American paid the same amount, which they don't, so the middle and lower class, they pay less than this is going to work out. It pays the lower classes paying more than they actually do in this metric, basically. But Ukraine aid for the foreseeable future will only cost around $10 a month. And that's if that's the same tax rate for every single American, which it's not. It works out as around 36 cents a day. 36 cents a day. When you take into account the fact that higher earners pay a larger proportion, it brings the number to around $2 a week, taking into consideration different tax bands. That's a fucking bargain. I mean, Jesus Christ, $2 a week. That's your subscription for the American superpower. Or, I could say, doing the right fucking thing and actually helping a people which are being invaded by a foreign country. Something which made America such a great country back in the 40s, and something which, I don't need to go there. If you're watching this video, you either know that it's the right thing to do and you're watching this to hear the points, or you genuinely need to just hear the strategic arguments, which, fair enough, so we're going to keep making them. So the American budget for defence, the amount of money that America allocates for its security and its defence, is $800 billion. China is $230 billion. Russia is $84 billion. So the amount of aid that the United States sent to Ukraine in 2022 was $24 billion. That's how much they sent. $24 billion out of 800. When you consider America's largest threats are countries like Russia and China, it's a fucking bargain to send that smaller percentage of your defence budget to declaw that bear. You can buy as many sticks and sharpen them to deal with that bear, but if you could just spend a little bit of that money on making sure that bear didn't have claws when you had to fight it and it didn't have teeth, then fucking hell is that a good deal. So this means that out of the US military spending for a single year, only 3.448% of that number has been used in Ukraine. 3.4% of America's entire military budget. And that's how much it's cost them for that last year to destroy that much Russian hardware and equipment. And Russia's military budget's going to increase. And they're going to struggle. Russia is running lower and lower on the amount of tanks that are actually still working, because many of Russia's tanks have been stored in wet, awful conditions on the outside. Many of their tanks aren't usable. The amount of tanks that Russia actually puts on paper is vastly over-exaggerating the amount of tanks they can actually use. That's why they're using T-60 fucking 2s. Because they're running low on stuff they can actually use. Sure, they're not running low on T-72s, but they are running low on T-72s that haven't been left outside with the hatches open for decades on end, with parts scavenged off them. So they are running low. They're not running low in that regard, but they are going to keep running lower. They're using up their stock, and that stock is finite. Russia can't make tanks like it used to. Again, T-14s, they've made 8 in the past 9 years. 8 of their new tanks. That is their actual new tank production rate. T-90Ms are modernised tanks from already existent chassis. So Russia can't replace this stuff. So that money spent is a fucking bargain. And this money being sent, it's going up Zelensky's nose. They're posing with Prada and all this fucking bollocks. The money being sent to Ukraine requires regular audits and regulation to avoid the issues of corruption. Yes, Ukraine as a country has been corrupt. It's had issues of corruption like any country emerging from a shitty old government and trying to not be poor anymore. It's got an issue of corruption. That's a fair reason. But America is aware of this. It's not just handing a bundle of cash to Zelensky looking the other way. That's not what's happening.
America is auditing and regulating where that money is being spent. Much of the money is actually being spent in America. And that's an important thing to note here. All the shells being sent to Ukraine from America are produced in America. An American worker, an American factory worker, a working class man is making that. He's going to work and making money because he's making that stuff. And it's going to Ukraine. This is the same with all of the stuff going there. All the new made Javelin missiles and all that stuff. It's American jobs and the American economy. That money isn't just being sent to Ukraine. Not at all. The vast majority of it is actually being invested in America to make things that can be sent to Ukraine. And all the equipment that is sent is tracked and logged at all times. Sure, there might be the occasional shipment that goes aloof, or it gets sent to the wrong regiment because some commander's a bit corrupt. But Jesus fucking Christ, billions of dollars aren't going to one politician's pocket. This is a ridiculous claim. Maybe they'll gain from it in the future because they can use their political... That's completely irrelevant. The point is this money is being sent. I mean, the fact that there's still people trying to peddle this idea that the money America is sending to Ukraine is being ruined by corruption. Ukraine's been fucking pushing Russia back in Kherson and Kharkiv. I mean, Jesus Christ, do you think that didn't happen because a good amount of support got to where it needed to be? Bakhmut has been under siege for 6 months. 6 months the Russian military has been apparently taking this place, and it's struggling like hell. Why? Because the Ukrainians are taking the stuff they're being given by the Americans, and they're doing a fucking good job of using it properly. That money's being allocated very well, and that's clear as day. So again, when we consider this is taken out, there's 2,380 of Russia's trucks, vehicles and jeeps, and 12 naval ships, and 78 aircraft, 80 helicopters. Again, this is a huge win. I mean, I mentioned earlier the Su-57 fell and only around 20 of them existing. America's going to be making about nearly 600 F-35s. The F-35, sure, you've got your pro-Russian trolls, they go, oh, it's a rubbish, it falls off aircraft all the time, it's got problems. 600! The Su-57, 20! I mean, this number comparison shows Russia can't make shit anymore. What it can make is usually a prototype or just for parade use. Because that's what Russia's military needs. That's what its security interest is look at my big parade and my cool music and my big tanks and all the parade and all the soldiers go ooh-lah and look how strong we are. You better not fuck with us. Why? Because when they actually invade a country like Ukraine, it takes a minimal amount of America's budget support and some of NATO. Russia's not fighting all of NATO because NATO's only given a small amount of their percentage of budget. So it's taken Ukraine and 3.4% of America's defence budget and some from Europe, and they're kicking Russia's head in. Sure, they're not invading Moscow, but the Russians that think Russia can beat NATO when 3.4% of America's defence budget is all it's taken to turn Ukraine into a country that can defeat Russia. What would happen if America's defence budget ballooned in an actual World War scenario where 100% of it was used? Where 300 times the amount of money being sent to Ukraine was being spent on NATO to fight Russia? They wouldn't stand a fucking chance. So it's clear, America's getting a good fucking deal from this Ukraine war. They're getting a Europe turning more aligned with America and buying more of America's goods. They're getting one of their enemies being declawed and weakened at a very small cost to America. But what happens if America did nothing? What happens if America turns its back and just doesn't care and all? Well, maybe we can spend the money on the homeless that we already have that money, we just don't spend it anyway. Because here's the reality for you. If America didn't spend that money on the homeless before the Ukraine war, they weren't going to do it after. Whichever political party you like, they didn't do it. Okay? It's a ridiculous thought to think, oh, this thing, oh, we just got to wait for that. It's the literal definition of fucking insanity. So if America does nothing, okay, China invades Taiwan, more people die. The world supplier of microchips that was pro-America is now controlled by China. Microchips that are pretty fucking important to technology that America exports. Ukraine becomes a subjugated people under Russia. Likely then Georgia, Moldova to follow. More wars, more people being oppressed. Now, I have put Finland on what I've written down here, but they have now officially joined NATO, so clap, clap, clap for the Finns. Well done and welcome. So, Iran would consolidate more of the Middle East. Much of OPEC would take a stance against the US, hurting American oil trade and the American dollar, weakening the American economy. There's an attempt to do this at the moment, but it's not nearly as much it would be if America was viewed as much weaker than it currently is. Europe would look elsewhere for security. It has shown with Russia how easily it will be reliant on Russia. How easily they will lean the wrong way. I mean, the American government was saying to countries like Germany that, look, you are being too reliant. Europe isn't America. They will go their own way. So they could do that. If America turns its back on Europe, Europe will find another ally. If America wasn't involved, it would be just maybe Russia versus China, and Europe would pick a fight there. It's all well and good not caring about the world until the world cares about you. And your land, and your territory, and your people, and your trade, and the possibilities of your state. And then American trade routes, that they go unprotected. US workers lose their jobs as certain US industries reliant on international trade with allies decline. The US dollar as the global reserve currency is replaced, in time, with more countries being reliant on China. A country which is not exactly concerned with being on the right side of human rights and, you know, democratic process and civil freedoms and such. I mean, sure, you can fault America, but Jesus fucking Christ, comparing it to China is ridiculous. What else happens? America doesn't fix its inner issues, but it does create more. It's no longer the leader of so many metrics. It's no longer the world's strongest country, as it's dug itself into irrelevancy. That's what happens when America turns into an isolated state. Because all the countries that are on the list of the top living standards, they're countries that are either a part of NATO or the European Union. Countries that have international trade and are important on the world stage. Those are the countries that rank highly in pretty much any metric. Be it prosperity or happiness or technology or economy. All those countries at that list, the ones that aren't America, are pretty much Western countries. Countries which are in the same trading bloc. So, it's clear that, you know, just turning its back on the world and abandoning Ukraine, which, while I could say, well, it's a horrible thing to do, it's also not in America's best interest, which is the point of this video. Purely strategic arguments. So how does arming Ukraine actually protect America's interests, or work in America's interests? Well, America makes a clear message that it won't accept invasions and by autocratic nations, that countries can't just fuck around, they are actually gonna find out. Right? China, if it invades Taiwan, there will be a response by the Americans. Countries can't just invade who they want. That's the message it sends. So China avoids Taiwan. Maybe remains content with trading with the United States, and there is no war between the two countries. Europe stays as an important, strong ally to the Americans, the enabling factor of Pax Americana. America's economy remains the strongest in the world, with China China is no longer likely to overtake America. The Chinese economy is predicted to overtake America. I know they were saying it as the superpower, but it was the economy they were on about, and China has slowed down vastly. America's growth rate is predicted better than China's now. China is slumping, and their GDP rates have been over-exaggerated anyway. There's many ways that this is shown and predicted. And it's not just economy anyway. China doesn't have a Europe, an area of 500 million people and the same GDP as China, no more than China. It has Russia. Russia supplies China with oil and gas and some things it can be beneficial to. America doesn't have that problem. America can produce its own resources, which China can't. It doesn't have to send money out of the country to do that. It actually exports it to allies. I mean, in conclusion, it's in the best interest of every red-blooded American for the United States to arm Ukraine. And forces that resist this play to America's enemies. Any mouthpiece which is spouting bullshit against, you know, they want to just abandon Ukraine and they care about America, so they want that money. They don't care about America. They're either so stupid that they don't realise that hurts America, or they're taking a check in the backhand, knowing what they're saying, knowing what it means. Making America a weak country isn't caring about America. Russia wants you to think that helping Ukraine is pointless. That Ukraine is only going to fight if America tells it to. That, you know, Ukraine totally didn't fight off when Russia initially invaded until support started a while later. That, Ukraine is only fighting because of America. They want America to stop arming Ukraine. They want you to think that all of America's problems that existed before Ukraine exist because America helps Ukraine somehow. It's therefore quite obviously within America's best interests, strategically, economically, and in their foreign policy, to help Ukraine and for Ukraine to win. We're already seeing Finland joining NATO, and Sweden trying, and Armenia now looking to America, a country that was in the CSTO, one of Russia's bloc countries, turning westwards. This is what happens when you are winning in geopolitics. This is a display of America winning this scenario. Yes, China and Russia are trying to go, oh please can we can use the Chinese currency and not use the American. They're trying hard to drop the American dollar, but it's much more complex than that. While there are some moves to drop the dollar, the truth of the matter is much of the world debt is still in the dollar. Many countries still use the dollar as the foreign currency, and the vast majority of the world's economy still uses the dollar standard. It's therefore quite obvious that while Ukraine isn't as big as the Second World War, it's still important for the same reasons in America's strategic interests. While America might not have been threatened by invasion from Hitler, it's clear why they couldn't let it happen, why they couldn't let this power take over that region. Because if all the world is controlled by powers which are against you, then while you might not care about them, they will care about you and they will come knocking on your door. It's important in America's security for that reason. But what if you're not American? What if you're watching this video and you're thinking this is all well great and good, Kaboda, but I'm not American? Well, you may be from the next place that's pouring arms to Ukraine, and that's Europe. But if you're from Europe, you likely don't even need to think about this. You don't even have to conceptualise why it's a good idea to arm Ukraine, because Russia's not a faraway distant country, it's on your doorstep. Well, maybe if you're in Britain, like where I'm from, there's a different feeling where you're on an island, everything's far away from you. But most of Europe, it's not oceans away from Russia. Ex-Soviet states especially know all too well what is in store for them if the wrong nation becomes the controlling power of the globe. While America may not be perfect and it has done bad things, a country which core values, while it may sound funny, is democracy and freedom and civil rights, that's the fucking country you want to be in control of the world power. People want, oh, well, it's about time that China or Russia disrupt the US hegemony. What do you think's going to happen when they're in control? China, a country which is genociding the Uyghurs. Many of these countries, I mean, America changes its leadership every 4 years. These countries don't do that. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about the right way of leading a country. Again, yes, America has done things wrong. Yes, they're not the utopian perfect country. I'm not saying America is the perfect country to be the world superpower or global hegemony. But they're the least shit of the current options when there's Russia and China. Because Jesus Christ, are they a worst option in every single way. So in most places like Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Moldova, these countries are all at great risk from Russian aggression. If the US became completely uninvolved, NATO wouldn't be able to defend itself as well and to defend these nations. The nuclear protection would become less of a certain deterrent and more of a questionable option, with only Britain and France being nuclear-armed countries in NATO if America was completely uninvolved. This becomes more of a risk of an actual war, more people dying. Europe knows all too well as well that appeasement doesn't work. That was tried with Hitler. Going, okay, you can take that bit of land, we'll leave it because we don't want worse problems to happen. Oh, well, they can take that bit of land. Oh, they can take a bit of Georgia, they can take Crimea, they can take a little bit of Donbass, they can invade all of Ukraine and oh, it's starting to fall apart now, isn't it? Appeasement doesn't work. We've seen it not work with Russia. We've seen nothing being done to them, meaning they just act again and again and again with more bullshit excuses. Oh, it's the ethnic Germans in Czechoslovakia. Sorry, it's the ethnic Russians in Donbass. It's ridiculous. It's bullshit. So if you're European with any idea of how the world works, you don't need to be convinced. It's much less likely that you're actually of the idea that letting Russia do what it wants is a good idea. There's a bit more history in Europe that makes it clear it's a bit of a shit idea. But there's other countries in the world. If you're from Japan or South Korea, you'll be worried to see the United States show its uninterest in stopping authoritarian regimes from running amok. You know, with China on their doorstep, they make sure to find their only option is to cooperate in that scenario. If the US is to leave them be, and this could even turn them into an anti-US coalition in Asia. Thankfully for much of the world, there is more than simply whether it or not it is in their best interests. While governments may act in their best interests, they need to do so when it's the right thing to do. Yes, America has done wrong things. That doesn't mean, because America invaded Iraq or whatever, that they shouldn't help Ukraine. This argument that America's done a wrong thing so they shouldn't do a right thing is ridiculous and stupid. So we've addressed why it's a wise thing to do, helping Ukraine. So it's important not to forget, finally, that it is the right thing to do. So I'm going to go on finally to what actually is the right thing to do. I don't want people to get the wrong idea that I simply think America should help Ukraine because it's in their best interests. You know, this whole proxy war thing that, it's bad because it's a proxy war, which a proxy war is a country helping another country in a war fight another. Like America helping Britain fight the Germans without America being directly involved. That's a proxy war. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. But anyway, why is it the right thing to help Ukraine? Because Ukraine is being fucking invaded by an authoritarian regime that's had the same leader for 20 years. Because it's killing hundreds of thousands of people and subjugating them with mockful, unbelievable referendums. Just because people speak a language, they must support that country. An argument which you can use that in countries like Scotland. People will go, what do you mean they speak English? Yeah, they do. That doesn't mean that they all support the Union. That argument in East Ukraine, by people who don't understand how it is over there, is so often used. Just because they speak Russian doesn't mean they want to be controlled by the Russian government. The Russian government which is conscripting them to send them into trenches to die. Russia invaded Ukraine. Russia, after a slowing down war in Donbass that was killing less and less and less and less people, year after year after year, slowing down, Russia invaded Ukraine. It started a large-scale war. And then it starts annexing the land it's taken. It starts actually incorporating the land its military is upon into the Russian Federation. And not just the Donbass, Zaporizhia and the Kherson regions. They're not a part of Donbass at all. Were being pulled into the Russian state. They are taking land through war, subjugating people to their rule. What if that happened to America? It was the right thing for America to be an independent country, to be a free land from the British Empire, for the same reason it is for Ukraine to be free from Russia. Were the Americans all wanting to be pro-British Empire because they spoke English? No! That doesn't hold up now. They're a free people with their own identity, their own history and culture, and they have a right to be a free people and a democratic country, which when they're subjugated by Russia they will not be. Yes, it's imperfect, but for the same reasons that America was right to help Britain in the Second World War, and I have to keep making this fucking metaphor, but it's the same thing with Ukraine, and right for the same reasons. Stopping authoritarian regimes in their tracks so that they don't wage even more war across the continent. So yes, it's the right thing to do. As well, in case you needed that to be pointed out. I mean, the vast majority of my viewers actually already know all this stuff. They're actually people with half a brain cell of common sense that understand these basic things. But I do like to expand upon the strategic argument. It's quite important to address because there's also some great people who, while they support Ukraine, they wonder if it's actually the right thing. And I understand why people would hold that perspective. That's a fair thing to believe. So I think we've pretty much covered that. It's in America's strategic interest, economically and in every way, to make America stay as the strong country it is, that many American patriots claim they love so much. Well, America's got to keep doing what America does best. It's got to keep being the global superpower, and that means doing global superpower shit in the end of the day. And it's also the right thing to do. So if it's in your best interests, it benefits you, and it's the right thing to do, it's a pretty fucking simple answer. we must keep arming Ukraine and keep helping them. They want to fight. They chose to fight before support was pledged. They're willing to fight your enemy. All they want is weaponry. You give them weaponry. It's fine. There's many arguments that are pushed by the pro-Russians to try and demean this and paint it in a bad way. Or America's sending Ukrainians to die, which is ridiculous. Ukrainians are being invaded by Russia. It's like saying America was sending British Spitfire pilots to die. It's equally stupid. And it's that sort of propaganda made to try and paint America as the bad guy in the scenario. Even if the American government was doing what it's doing in Ukraine only and simply for the strategic reasons, that doesn't mean that what they are doing isn't the right thing to do. Just like if fighting the Germans in the Second World War, the Hitler's forces, if America only did that because of its own security interests, that doesn't mean it wasn't the right thing to do fighting evil. And that's the same thing here. So it's the right thing to do, and it's in America's best interests. I think that concludes the video quite nicely. So, moving on to a bit of a channel update, as I'm going to try and do at these videos. I did a smaller video on the Finland ascension into NATO. Wonderful news, good to hear that. I have decided I'm going to make a new type of video other than these videos. So if you've seen my comment section, it's fucking hilarious. There's a lot, I don't know if they're Russian bots or trolls or just genuine people that are that thick, but they don't seem to watch the video. They just come and make a comment which doesn't seem to actually respond to anything said in the video or makes no sense. So I'm thinking about doing some videos where I literally, it's not this, I'm just responding to the comments I get, either debunking the points being made or just having a bit of a laugh, a bit of banter about what's going on, what the fuck they're saying. You know, the comments they're generally quite funny, and I genuinely think that could be entertaining. A bit more of a light-hearted style of video. If you think that's a good idea and you would be interested, make sure to comment below. I also have a Patreon that is now finally up, so if you really do like my content and you want to support me, you can do that there. Please consider your financial situation before doing though, but it's all explained over there if you wish to do so. I'll put the link of the Patreon in the description. And other than that, the next video should be out in around 2 weeks' time. Unless I do that comment video, I can do those a lot quicker. So I look forward to all that stuff. Lots of stuff to come. There's a lot more videos I've got planned now. So other than that, thank you for watching. If you've gotten this far, then fucking hell, have you not got anything else better than to do than this? Jesus Christ. This is nearly an hour. This is my longest fucking video. Anyway, I'm grateful that you've watched it this far, and I hope you enjoyed the content. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and share this wherever you can. It's a great help to me if you share this on your grandma's Facebook page or on some subreddit, wherever you want to share it. It's a great help. The better the channel does, the more I can do these videos. My editing does need to get better. I need to get a different computer. The computer I've got isn't very good, so that's another thing I'm planning to work along if the channel does well enough, is a proper computer, so my editing I can do better, because honestly it limits what I can actually do. I can't use too many video footage because it starts to overload the computer. It's just not strong enough. But other than that, I think that covers enough. So thank you for watching the video. I've been Kaboda, and I'll see you next time. Cheers guys.